morning YouTube, YTPC, how are you all doing out there? We got a nice cool Sunday morning here in Switzerland, about 18 degrees, not uncomfortable, not warm, not cold, you know, no wind at all, which is nice. Smoking my Dr. Grabo freehand. I love this pipe. It's somewhat larger than most Grabos you can get today, and it's just a lovely pipe to smoke. 6mm. Got my Pariser filters in it, and always smokes good. You know, inexpensive pipe, but nicely finished. Love it. So the lighter today is the Eye of the Dragon Zippo Armour, beautiful. And actually a special tamper that I just recently got from my good friend Jean Panzer, who had a few of these. He received them from a great guy in Germany called the 80s Child, who has a fantastic channel for those who watching speak German as well. And he had these lovely tampers, bullet tampers done, and there's actually a magnet here, so they put them on a metal table, they won't fall over. Absolutely beautiful. I'm so lucky to have friends like Sean. Well, today actually I'd like to make a video reply to good friend Victorian Piper, who has achieved nearly 400 subs. Well done, mate, because he's only been going a few months. It's absolutely fantastic. And I do love his style. As you know, I like old things. I'm more like a 1780s sort of character, and he hangs there in the Victorian period, and he's doing some lovely videos about factories and mines that things have been restored and they're turning it into a kind of place to visit. What I wanted to choose as my topic for a person in the 1800s that I pick out because I love all of his work and what he did was Charles Dickens. And here's a drawing of Charles Dickens, and also an old photograph. Well, Charles Dickens was born in 1812, 3 years before the Battle of Waterloo, and he died in 1870. He was only 58 when he died, but that was a kind of normal age then. Yeah. And he's buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. So he did well to live that long, and I think everyone's heard of Charles Dickens. I remember once a teacher in school basically was talking about one of the books that we must study, which was called Bleak House, and he said, "Mills, who wrote Bleak House?" And my answer to him was, "How the dickens should I know?" And of course at that point, and they were like that in those days, he took the blackboard rubber and threw it at me, you know, which I ducked, and it hit a pot of ink on 2 tables behind me, so we all had another laugh at him, you know. Deserved it. Of course, you've heard of David Copperfield, you've heard of the Pickwick Papers, you've heard of Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, Tale of Two Cities, Bleak House, all these famous novels that Dickens wrote so brilliantly and with great observation from his own life of what the hardships and the cruelties and the corruptions and the kind of characters that are out there in the world. A little bit like when we tell fairy tales to children to warn them there are good people and there are bad people. There are the witches and nasty people, and there are good people. So, you know, and a little bit when you get a few years older, about 10 or 12, and these kind of stories sharpen the focus that it's not only fictitious fairy characters you have to watch out for, the human beings are the worst ones. Well, of course he had quite a hard life, Charles Dickens. He basically was moving into London 1822. He's only about 10 years old, and his father 2 years later was imprisoned because he was in debt. You know, he was not that successful as a businessman, and if you couldn't pay your debts, those who you owed money to would report you and make sure you had a hard time by going to a prison where there are all kinds of consequences, because the children, for example, might have to then, or your wife may have to go to a workhouse, which in his case, his mother and he had to do that. Initially he could avoid it, but of course he was always visiting them and saw how things were, but a short time he also had to endure it. He managed then to find work in a shoe polishing factory, so that allowed him to escape. 1827, he basically, he'd been a year or two back at school. He was a very intelligent child. He, I think, force speed learned everything he'd missed at school by being away and caught up, and he was very good in writing, basically, the English language. So he got a job in 1827 at a lawyer's office. So he obviously was very reliable, wrote very legibly, and was intelligent, so was able to sort of get on the rung of employment. 1829, so he was just 17, he was a stenographer at the Parliament. 1836, so he was just 24, he got married to his wife Catherine, and with her he had 10 children, so quite a family. It was only about 1836, so he was just coming to the point where his first publications were made, Pickwick papers in the Morning Chronicle. So he realised the advantage if you could write a series for a newspaper, regular work, and if it caught on, you could make your name very quickly. And of course Pickwick papers, anyone who's seen the films or the plays on television or radio plays, of course, before that, beautiful performances. I've listened to a good many on radio, and they're just absolutely fantastic, from the 30s and 40s. And here's Mr. Pickwick himself. He became, in a very short time, quite a famous figure. 1838 he wrote Oliver Twist, and that was published in the Daily News. So rather like Conan Doyle with Sherlock Holmes, where basically gone into the newspapers, and of course you have a very big readership very quickly. It's the smart way, if you like, to start publishing what could be books and things afterwards. And so by 1838 it was more or less a household name. 1843 he published his what I love as the most fantastic work, which was A Christmas Carol. And almost every Christmas there's a film of one kind or another showing that beautiful story. And here's old Fezziwig dancing at the Christmas party with Ebenezer Scrooge on the left. And I love the version with Alistair Sim. It was made in the 1950s, and absolutely brilliant film, perfect performance of Scrooge by Alistair Sim, absolute classic. If see a chance to watch it on YouTube or anywhere else, I do recommend it. I think it's the finest performance, and all the character actors were perfectly chosen. There were some very good versions later, of course, all the way up to Patrick Stewart did one not too many years ago. Also very, very good, you know, but that's my favourite one, and it's a favourite story because the thing about Dickens is he awoke the conscience of the Christian mentality in the Victorian period, regarding the hardship and the need for charity and kindness, and the abundance of corruption and cruelty, especially to those who can't defend themselves, people who have fallen on hard times, women who may have been widowed, and in the first line, of course, children. And I think he very quickly stirred the Victorian conscience to look at themselves and consider how they were behaving. And at that time, of course, and towards the 1900s, a lot of reforms were coming along. We had, at the time Dickens was young, we had the Poor Law. The Poor Law basically said, right, we don't want these poor around, let's make it unpleasant for them to be poor and put them in a workhouse and make it deliberately so bad that they won't want to stay. Well, of course, it's a crazy mentality to say we can get rid of the poor by just making it unpleasant to be poor. Well, anyway, I was reading that Dickens was a member of the Garrick Club. I should have had my Ben Wade Garrick pipe, really, shouldn't I? But which was a club, of course. Garrick used to be a theatre, and he was very befriended with actresses and actors, and he loved the theatre. And he was a man of theatre as well. He used to apparently hide in his house and jump out of cupboards at visitors, or especially the children, which I think he really loved. The children and playing with them and amusing them. He did unfortunately divorced in 1858, and it probably was because he was having a relationship with Ellen Tennon, who was an actress at that time, quite a famous one. He did do one or two trips in the US, of course, like Mark Twain went around having presentations and readings of his novels and in theatres and you know, various assembly halls across the country. So Dickens also did the same thing and became very well known in the United States as well around that time. Apparently he died 1870 from a stroke, and at the age of 58 he passed on. But his style is still legendary today. It's beautiful, poetic Victorian prose to read how he describes things in fantastic description. It's a very theatric, dramatic writing style with a lot of satire and a lot of humour in it as well, with characters so named according to how they would appear. So Uriah Heep, you know, the creepy, nasty clerk who was treacherous. Oh, I'm so very humble, Master Copperfield. Yes, you know, you can picture this guy, and his treachery, of course, came out, but always he was trying to disguise it. And I think a lot of these characters Dickens had met in his youth, and you know, he to a certain extent was Copperfield, or some of the characters in his other stories. Well, that's my proposal for this video reply to Victorian piper, and I do think it was a brilliant idea. I do love your channel and all those videos and how you dress. I think that's fantastic. And I do admire the period of the Victorian age in its context, of course. We're always judging things from how our morality is set now, right and wrong, etc. I wonder in 100 years how they will judge our view of what's right and wrong. We will see. Certainly there were a lot of bad things still going on, and still are going on in the world, so you can't get everything right, and history is what it is. It's just facts of what happened. You can't change it now. But it was a very interesting dynamic period, and Dickens for me is one of the very important characters that I recommend everybody read something from him, whatever you find more interesting for a topic. But he has a great many books, some lesser known than others, but all worth a read. So take care everyone. Also use in Victorian England in your videos. Marvellous, keep doing them, I love them. Take care everyone, cheers, bye bye.